Right, welcome back, everybody. Now, nearly 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Lynne Brown, removed 6 non-executive directors from the SAA board, citing refusal to cooperate with and improve operations at the airline. Shortly thereafter, the chairman of the board, Ms. Dudu Myeni, suspended the chief executive officer, Monwabisi Kalawe. The minister has apparently instructed for the suspension to be reversed. Now, the chairman has reportedly defied this instruction, so the big question is, where to now for SAA? Mr. Oba Chakarisa wears many hats, but today he joins us as an aviation expert and analyst in the studio. It's good to have you. Thank you very, very much for being our guest on the program. So it's just, our airline, SAA, it seems to be another problem there. Just try and make sense of what's happening there for us.
Thank you so much for having me here on your program. I would not want to go into details in terms of exactly what is happening inside the boardroom, but from an analyst's point of view, this is exactly what you would not require at this time for this airline. We do know that, of course, that if you've got a board that seemingly is dysfunctional, ultimately you're going to have problems in terms of steering this ship to the correct direction. And one needs to know, of course, that we are looking at an airline that is in the process of developing its 10th strategy in the past 13 years, which is already in itself quite unusual. And so boardroom shenanigans are exactly the last thing that one would expect in an airline which is seriously looking to reposition itself as a leading airline on the continent.
Yeah. By defying the minister's orders, SAA chairwoman Dudu Myeni, by not reinstating Monwabisi Kalawe, is this in the best interest of the airline? Do you believe that? Well,
what is very critical, Lynn, is to make sure that all structures of the airline do function effectively and in full harmony with the rest. For instance, the minister is the representative of the shareholder, has oversight over the board, and the board has oversight over management, which of course includes the chief executive officer. Now, if you have got a disconnect between the minister and the board, and you have got disconnect between the board and management, that is a recipe for disaster. So one would hope, of course, that we're not seeing a situation of defiance, but we're seeing a situation probably where the airline I'm really convinced that they're going to respond to the minister because the latest I hear is that the minister is asked for a written explanation as to exactly what is happening within the board, and in particular with the position of the chief executive officer.
Okay. Now, if we take our minds back slightly, the minister gave this board 4 tasks, and those tasks were to remind ourselves to finalise financial statements for the last year, table them to Parliament, hold an AGM, and appoint and implement the turnaround strategy with the current climate that's happening now. I mean, is any of this possible?
I think what I need to emphasize is that what the minister has asked from the SA board is what every board should be able to deliver.
Obviously.
Every board should be able to deliver an annual report. Every board should be able to call for an AGM. Every board should be able to present and implement a strategic plan. Otherwise, what is the purpose of having the board, which becomes dysfunctional? So I think what the minister has asked for is what every shareholder would want the board to present, and it's not things that are out of this world. And I think SAA should be capable of producing what the minister has asked for. But what is quite critical, I must hasten to add, is that aviation industry is a highly complex industry. It requires people with the correct expertise and knowledge of the industry to be able to deliver. It's different from, of course, running some other kind of business. So what is very critical is making sure that from a minister's side, because we know that this is an interim board, we'll have a board that has aviators who are able to understand the dynamics of this industry. And remember, SAA competes with the national airlines who are run differently, maybe more efficiently. So we need a board, of course, for the national airline that is efficient, effective, understands the industry and its mandate.
Yeah. Just finally and very quickly, should government continue bailing SAA out like this?
Look, I think the problem of SAA continue to be bailed out emanated from its unbundling from Transnet. It was undercapitalized, and that has been always the perennial problem that SAA faced. So, of course, from a public point of view, bailing an airline for 16 billion over the last few years is quite enormous. And I think one would imagine that probably this turnaround strategy would be the one that could steer the airline in the correct direction. Of course, one of the reasons why the annual report is not presented, because the financials are not in good state. There must be a government guarantee that is probably confirmed before they can release the annual reports. So I think partly to their empathizing with the situation is that when they unbundled from Transnet, they were undercapitalized. But you can't continue. There must be a stop eventually to say, where do we go from now on? And I'm thinking that probably if we use this opportunity with this strategic plan, then we can move forward with the airline and it can live off its own balance sheet and not rely on the government as if it's a personal loan, for personal bank for the airline.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in, analysing the situation for us at our national airline. Mr. Oba Chakarisa, wearing many hats, but today that of an aviation analyst and examining what's happening at the airline. Thank you very, very much for being our guest here on Morning Live. All right.